Hi everyone! Today I have another bookmark video for you. So I started by cutting my watercolor paper. This is a Strathmore watercolor paper. And then I used my painter's tape to tape it down to my cutting mat. Next I pulled out a few different distress inks and also one of my Stampin' Up! Pads of ink. This is the real red color. I didn't have a distress ink that was the perfect red that I was looking for, so I used the Stampin' Up! Ink instead. Then I started just doing some very random ink blending, putting color down in random places. I was going for a very fiery look for this bookmark. This is actually part of the series of bookmarks that my friend ordered to give as a gift, but he liked this one and decided to keep it. I'm really glad he decided to keep one. When you're ink blending with distress ink, it might seem like it's not working out so well in the beginning, but the trick is just to keep working at it. It can take a long time to lay down enough color to blend well, and it might look splotchy until then. With this particular piece, I was planning on doing a lot of embossing over the top, so it didn't really matter if it was that splotchy, because that was gonna all be hidden anyways. So I carefully pulled up the tape and I cut off the border. And then I split it in half and I can use the other piece for another project. So I pulled out this really geometric looking stamp that I plan on covering a majority of the bookmark with. I'm prepping the paper for embossing because I plan on stamping with Versamark ink and using black embossing powder. When I was planning this bookmark, I thought it would be really cool to stamp an image over almost the entire background and have that fiery background glowing through the black embossed image. So I used my Fisker's stamp press to pick up the stamp. I don't actually own a lot of stamp blocks. It's something that I need to get, so this was the only thing that this image would fit on. I've held off on buying a lot of stamp blocks because I'm hoping to get a Misty tool, maybe for my birthday. My husband's kind of hinted at the fact that I might get one for my birthday, so I'm really hoping. So I took this stamp and I tried to fit it as best as I could together to create one stamped image. And it didn't matter if it was completely perfect because I wasn't going for a perfect crisp look here. I kind of wanted it to be a little distressed feeling. So I didn't heat set the embossing powder until the very end of all the stamping, but I did put the powder on there so I could see where I had stamped already. The stamp that I used here is actually from a Fisker stamp set. I had no idea that Fiskers made stamp sets until one day I was walking around browsing Joann's and I saw them. I'm not sure if they still sell them. It might not be a product that you can get anymore, but I will post in the description below all of the products that I used and the ones that you can buy. I'll have links to. This last bit of stamping got a little tricky. So in order to get these last two areas, I found that the stamp press, the feet on it were going to touch the powder on other areas, and that would ruin it, and I didn't want that to happen. So instead, for these last two areas, I put the stamp on half of my block because, like I said, it wouldn't fit on the whole block, but I didn't need to stamp the whole image, so it worked out just fine. So now that all the stamping's done, I just clean up my area a little bit, use my brush to wipe away any embossing powder that got on my mat, and then I'm going to heat emboss it. When you're heating up a large area like this, when it's covering almost the entire paper, you don't really want to hold the paper while you're heat embossing because you could burn yourself. So before I started using my heat tool, I clipped a pair of tweezers on the end there for when I need to pick up the paper. This is just a way to protect your fingers from getting burned by the heat tool at all. It is possible to do this while holding it. You just have to be extremely careful and not get that heat tool anywhere near where your fingers are holding the paper. So after the embossing is all done, I'm going to wipe off the paper a little bit to try and remove any excess powder from my powder tool. You don't want to do this immediately. You want to wait a couple seconds because the embossing could still be wet and then it would smear. When you heat emboss something, it does dry very quick, but it still needs time to dry, even if it's just a couple seconds. Trust me, I've smeared something before and it's never fun when you've worked hard on it and it gets ruined. Now I'm just taking a piece of black cardstock and I taped my bookmark to it to create a little border. Alright guys, now it's time for the best part, picking out the sequins. I love sequins, they make me so happy. Picked out a bunch of reds and oranges and some black. Still going with that fiery lava feel. Oh my gosh, guys, would you look at how messy that little container is? I need to go clean it out right now. I really like to keep all my craft stuff organized, so that box is a nightmare. Stirring up my little sequin soup. Alright, so I'm getting my plastic ready to fuse together so that I can make this shaker bookmark. I just keep seeing my reflection in the plastic during this part and I look so weird because it's all distorted. I used my fuse tool and I fused that edge together. You want to let your fuse tool heat up at least 10 minutes, I would say 15 to be safe, before you use it. If it doesn't heat up enough, what's going to happen is it'll look like it fuses your plastic and there's going to be the line there and it'll look like it fused together properly, but if you move it at all, it's going to just fall right apart because it didn't melt enough and it didn't fuse properly. When I first started using this tool, I did that all the time and I realized that I really needed to let that tool heat up for a long time before it worked well. I had heard a lot of people tell me that this tool needed to heat up for a while before using it, but I'm a very impatient person, so I would start using it way too early, and I learned my lesson. It is really no fun getting one of these bookmarks completely finished and having the sequins in there and fusing up the end and then having the whole thing fall apart. So right here where you see me really fidgeting with this bookmark, that's because when I put the sequins in, the bookmark wasn't all the way at the bottom of the plastic, and a bunch of the sequins got lodged down there and weren't moving. So I had to adjust and shake and move everything until the bookmark was in the proper place and the sequins could move around. Now, I mentioned this in my last video, and I just want to stress it again. If you use a fuse tool on your cutting mat like this, you will ruin the cutting mat and it will melt. And the only reason that I use it on the cutting mat is because this is my old backup cutting mat that I don't mind ruining. I think in a future video I'll show you how to make a piece of cardboard for fusing on with the proper angle and everything for you to be able to make even angles. For the tassel of the bookmark, I chose a black twine. I cut out about 5 or 6 pieces of the twine. Next, I'm going to take the twine and fold it in half and create a little loop on the end. I push that loop through the hole on the top of the bookmark and then take the other end and push that through the loop in order to make the tassel. So that's the bookmark, guys. This fiery red lava looking bookmark. Thanks for watching.